Well, this morning's discussion will revolve around the exotic theme of disincarnate intelligences and non-human entities that seem to occupy a kind of undefined ontological limbo in terms of precisely what their status in the world is. Whatever their status in the world is, when you start looking at the question of these disincarnate entities, the first thing that strikes you is their persistence in human experience and folklore. This is not something unusual or statistically rare. In all times and in all places, with the possible exception of Western Europe for the past 200 years, a kind of social commerce between human beings and various kinds of disincarnate entities or non-human intelligences was taken for granted. And this could be as simple as the Celtic farmer's wife leaving out a pitcher of milk for the Fae folk, or it could take more elaborate forms. Because the second aspect of this question that you encounter is the tremendous variety of these entities, that we're apparently talking about a kind of parallel taxa in another continuum, because we have jinns, afrits, water nixies, boulder grinders, gnomes. The list is endless, and that's only the list within the context of the European imagination. Once you add in all the various ethnic takes on the potential for non-human intelligent life forms, you have a truly vast array of peculiar creatures, all expressive of a very fundamental belief system that seems to be inimical to the human condition. Well, before we get into the history of this idea, it might be good to simply review the logical options that are open to us in examining a phenomenon of this sort. And I take the logical options to be basically three: that these entities are, in some sense, or that some of these entities are rare but physical, and they sort of operate somewhere between the coelacanth and the Bigfoot. It potentially could be imagined moving from the realm of mythology into the realm of established zoological or botanical fact, and this has in fact happened in some fairly unspectacular cases. This is certainly the least interesting, but for example, the Yeti is a creature which refuses to declare whether it is simply a rare member of the ordinary taxa of this planet or something quite different. The second option that lies before us when we look at the ontological status of these entities is what I would think of as the Jungian position. And to demonstrate it, I'll simply quote Jung on the subject of sprites and elementals. He calls them autonomous fragments of psychic energy which have temporarily escaped from the controlling power of the ego. In other words, this is what I would call the mentalist reductionist approach to disincarnate entities and intelligences. It's saying they are somehow part and parcel of our own minds, and their existence is dependent upon our conceiving them as objects in our imagination, however pathologically expressed.
In other words, the humanist position that all God's entities are merely projections of our own minds.
Exactly. The projection,
escaped
mental, escaped from the controlling force of the ego. It's a wonderful image. And then the third And obviously more interesting but fraught with argumentative pitfalls is that these are, one, non-physical, and two, autonomous in their existence in some sense. In other words, that they actually do carry on an existence independent of their being perceived by human beings. And then, and this is the position, the classical position of those who have had the largest amount of experience dealing with these entities, which